Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. And Jason is totally screwing me up with this mixer. I hate you.
I don't know what happened. I'm sorry.
This is why we test things. Where was I? If you want to interact with us, send questions or comments, especially about Jason's audio editing, to the Masonic Roundtable at our Twitter page, at Mason Roundtable, or on the Facebook event page for episode 168, Hearing.
Fixed it.
I'm going to fix you. You know me, John T. Ruart, past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, in Fairfax, Virginia. I'll hand it off to Robert Johnson for his introduction.
Hey everybody, RJ Robert Johnson from Waukegan Lodge number 78 in Waukegan, Illinois, where I'm a past master and current secretary and a total biased world's best DDGM. Woo! Probably not though.
You're the best DDGM I know from Waukegan.
That's right.
All right, Juan, introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in Kissimmee, Florida, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast. Good evening, brothers.
Thank you. And last but not least, Jason Richards.
What John didn't tell you was the T stands for Twinkle Toes. Jason Richards here, Worshipful Master of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C.
Yay. Okay. Welcome all. Let's get to Masonic news. First item, of course, is we are less than a month away from the best 300 celebration you've had all year, which is 300 Freemasonry's Legacy, Freemasonry Future. Robert did a great introduction of the day's events.
Oh my God.
On his podcast, so thank you for doing that. So we'll give you the short version. Come check it out, theMasonicRoundtable.com/300. And we'll be selling tickets up to the date. So if you're on the fence, come on over. We'll find room. But we do need to give a head count to the caterers. So if you want to guarantee some food, let us know sooner than later by buying your ticket. Awesome.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
It will be a lot of fun.
Won't want to miss it.
And yes, we did have a question earlier. Will all four of the hosts be there? And the answer is yes. All four of us will be there in person. No one's skipping this one.
But yeah, okay.
But
I don't know. I'll be there.
You're gonna be there. There are no refunds for your ticket.
It won't be there, but that's okay.
Rude.
Get to us.
Been trying to get him to come out. Maybe we can Skype him.
Ooh.
Oh,
Audio only, so no one has to look at them.
I know what you're thinking.
yeah.
Maybe we'll make it happen. It'll be a treat for listeners of this.
Our reunion tour. We're getting the band back together.
Okay, another cool thing that happened today, if you're listening to this live, which is May 30th, 2017. Doctor Strange is now finally on Netflix. So if you go to episode 150, we did a episode on the Masonic symbolism of Doctor Strange, where Fratero and myself and a couple others were digging deep into all of the symbolism and texts and everything that was being referenced in the movie Doctor Strange. What I highly encourage fans of the show who have not seen this yet is to go watch Doctor Strange. Keep your eyes peeled for any texts or metaphors or anything related to his astral traveling, and then go back to episode 150 where you can hear one interpretation of many, I'm sure, of the symbolism hidden therein.
That's exactly what I did.
Did you do it today?
No, not today. The day of the show,
Good.
I bailed out. You remember?
Of course. That's good. Because you were like, no spoilers.
I had not seen the movie. Then I watched the movie and then watched the show, and I'm better for it.
Good.
I had no idea it was out, and you just put this up, and I'm like, I know what I want to do tonight, but I've got other stuff to do. But man, that's a great movie.
It's only 1 hour 55 minutes. That's all you need.
It's a lot of time, man.
Gonna do it. You have a commute anyway.
But not unlimited data.
I do. Moving on.
Yeah, you would. I don't want to move on.
Next topic. It's a great movie. Go watch it. In Masonic news this week, the Freemasons parade through Guernsey for the first time in 100 years. So Guernsey is an island in the British Isles that's under the generic territory of the British Crown. I'm going to mess it up of who owns who and who reports to who, so my apologies in advance for those across the pond. However, I found this article interesting because, again, they hadn't really done public processions for over 300 or for over 100 years since 1917. And, with the spirit of the 300th anniversary, they donned their regalia and marched on the streets. It's not as good as, a big celebration in the George Washington Masonic Memorial, but it'll do. There's a couple pictures there of their regalia. It's a big deal, of course, for Freemasons to go out in any British-owned territory, obviously. So I found that to be interesting. Any other thoughts on that? Hearing none. Last
Square
time
and compasses are wrong.
they are. No. Yes. On the banner.
LE flag.
Who designed that banner?
There's no G in the middle.
I thought it was a picture of a bird's mouth. Next topic. Local tilers to get major upgrades. This comes from the satire site The Past Bastard, where, according to Phoenix, Arizona, there's going to be an upgrade for the tilers who usually have just a small little dinky sword. We've upgraded them to having armed drones because, quote, we can't be too careful in this day and age.
Apparently, they're also supposed to save the lodge's money because they don't have to pay their tilers anymore.
They're autonomous. I like it.
Well, my question is then, who's gonna pay the people to sit and watch the feed, or
you
arm
could
the
have
missile?
you can have an EA do that.
How are you gonna fire the missile at a Cowan without blowing off half the building?
Details.
Who cares? Masons don't think about that kind of stuff. We just do it.
It's like any other policy that a Grand Lodge would come up with.
Collateral damage.
You know what we need? A wall.
I wonder what the per capita is in that state to pay for drones. Man, Phoenix, Arizona. What's your per capita, guys? Man, that's good investing.
Funny stuff.
We got one hell of a life membership program.
400 times dues. Okay. This week's topic is on the topic of hearing. So one of the things that we discussed was having a multi-part series going through the various senses in Freemasonry. And so we decided to start with the topic of hearing. Now, without spoiling anything, the topic of the five senses does come up in part of the moral instruction of our Blue Lodge degrees. And so what we would like to do is to take a little time and deconstruct how hearing can be applied symbolically, how it may fit with how we're supposed to learn and grow in knowledge, and anything else that comes to mind. So I think I'll kick off the conversation by quoting just a short paragraph from Albert Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, where he states that hearing is one of the five senses and an important symbol in Freemasonry, because it is through it that we receive instruction when ignorant, admonition and when in danger, and reproof when in error, and the claim of a brother who is in distress. Without this sense, the Freemason would be crippled in the performance of all his duties, and hence deafness is deemed a disqualification for initiation. You have to remember the context of the time when Albert Mackey wrote that, but I'm sure that'll come up as well. The lack of hearing disqualify someone for initiation. Okay, so let's start to deconstruct that, and let me start with Juan, since you just got off of
I just muted myself.
just muted yourself. Juan, how do you think hearing, in your opinion, is best interpreted as a Masonic symbol?
Well, we of course hear the mention of hearing in the expression of the attentive ear, which is coupled with the instructive tongue. Now, it of course one precedes the other because it is important that we receive something, or we receive in order for us to be able to give out. And one of the things that I like is that we have to, early in our Masonic journey, be encouraged to listen. And one thing that you might come across is, like, you have someone who comes into the fraternity and he's zealous for information and he wants to get more, and he's finding stuff in all kinds of sources and is trying to bring all that into the lodge without giving an opportunity to perhaps listen to those who to preceded. So it is a good admonishment here to pay attention to the listening component, so that you can receive and then ideally interpret and eventually apply.
Very, very. Let's see, Jason, how do you think one should apply hearing?
So for me, hearing, is one of the senses whereby we form the foundational of our Masonic experience, specifically in the degrees and the education imparted into those degrees, and also the recognition of other men as brethren and fellow Masons. So, for when it comes to the sense of hearing, we are able to get the instruction from all of the degrees, especially if there are cases where you're unable to see, and hearing and to a lesser degree touch is all you have. We talk a lot about the lost word, the tetragrammaton, as Robert has alluded to in some of his presentations. And how do you find that word? It ultimately comes down to hearing it, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But for me, really, the sense of hearing forms the basest foundation for our Masonic experience. It's the first thing we experience as candidates. It's the first way we experience Masonry as candidates, rather.
Awesome. And I'll let Robert chime in too with his thoughts, his initial thoughts.
Initially, all I can say about hearing is that it is the basis of it's like the only way, it's your true connection, according to like a bazillion texts on the Tetragrammaton that I've read. Hearing is that key piece that allows one to not only hear it, but it's symbolic in the sense that it's the one thing that connects you to the original essence. I guess that's it for now.
That's a fair point. I guess my initial thoughts on it are that, really when you look at it from a ritualistic perspective, that we get probably 95% of the degree experience through hearing. And I think it's interesting too, from being kind of a social scientist as well, to look at how on the opposite side of the coin, when you're in meetings or when you do things face to face versus over the phone, that they say just the opposite's true, that 85% of the message is conveyed through body language, through seeing. But we deliberately reduce someone's ability to see through the degree system so that we can enhance their hearing. Also, with the fact that when you have like mouth to ear states like Virginia, where the ritual has to be word perfect and conveyed, literally mouth to ear, that it overemphasizes and forces that constraint onto the knowledge acquisition process, the learning process. So it really is a critical element of truly understanding what Freemasonry is, in the way that it's prescribed to transfer knowledge from one person to another. So I think that's really just my initial thoughts on how hearing is such a critical element. One?
Yeah, I did want to mention that when you mentioned mouth to ear, I wanted to put in the mind of the listener and the viewers the proximity factor. You could learn from a distance, like from one to many, a message that goes from one to many, and you can hear that way. But the emphasis of mouth to ear is important because there's a connection, there's a proximity between the did you hear that? There's thunder right now. Anyway. So there's a proximity between el emisor y el receptor. Help me translate that. The emitter and the receiver. The only way that you can transmit information mouth to ear is with that proximity. So in the way in which I interpret it is it alludes to that bond, that brotherhood, that connection that you build with that individual who is perhaps helping you through the catechism, that one brother that is actually helping you see some of the lessons of Masonry from a different point of view. So just learning Masonry by just reading the books or maybe just watching our program is good, but it neglects that important component of mouth to ear.
Awesome. That's a really good point, that it really, to me, emphasizes the duality of nature that we're also taught throughout various elements of the degrees, that in order to hear, you must have one that transmits as well, which shows an intimate bond between the light and the dark, the transmitter and receiver. That's really enlightening. Thank you, Juan. Let's see, another thing I wanted to mention. Let's talk about the elephant in the room there, that Mackey talked about deafness being deemed as a disqualification for initiation. Let RJ describe why that used to be so before we go into how can that be adapted for modern times. Robert, was deafness a disqualifier?
Yeah. So actually, in Article 12 of the 1874 edition of the Constitution and Bylaws of the Grand Lodge of Illinois, it specifies the qualifications of a candidate. So the section reads, every candidate applying for the degrees in Masonry must have the senses of a man, especially those of hearing, seeing, and feeling, be a believer in God, capable of reading and writing, and possessing no maim or defect in his body that may render him incapable of conforming literally to what the several degrees respectively require of him. No provision of this section shall be set aside, suspended, or dispensed with by the Grand Master or the Grand Lodge. Which is interesting, right? Because we've done away with that. The idea was that exactly what they say in this is that you have to be able to conform literally to what the degrees require of you. So you have to be able to hear the words. You have to be able to hear passwords. You have to be able to convey just about everything there is within the degree. I mean, we are a ritual society to a point. And in that, anybody who ever wants to be able to assist in conferring degrees or anything, I mean, being able to hear that is key, because, look, not everybody learns sign language. And how cool would it be to actually be in a lodge where a degree is being conferred in sign language? I think it would be amazing. But let's be honest, that doesn't happen, that I've seen anyway or heard of. And the requirement of being able to hear is literally just tied directly to what's required of you. And if I could just read a bit more. So a piece that Mike Shirley wrote a while back about this very edict. He continues. It goes on to talk about like the prospect of wounded and maimed servicemen returning from World War I. And eventually these things kind of just went away because of our servicemen coming back in who were maimed and injured or couldn't hear. So to a point, it's almost like it is what it is until it's necessary that we have to drop the requirement.
Well, yeah, RJ, I was going to say that I remember reading that that amputees were barred from membership.
True story. Yeah.
To fully participate in the degrees and the modes of recognition. So thankfully, as we evolve and as we modernize, I think some things go the way of the buffalo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and so what the takeaway there is that up until recently, that a lot of the ritual was a literal interpretation, right? I'm sure there's some committee on work guys back in the day who were trying to determine what is the symbolic vice the literal version of the ritual. And I can imagine, I don't know, I don't have anything to base this on, but that their interpretation was very much literal, that you had to have full faculties of seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, feeling, all that, so that you could get the ritual without modification, right? That their ritual was,
and you can taste the green beans for dinner.
What's interesting though, I mean, in several aspects, I guess it just depends on what people hold, sacrosanct or whatever, whether it's, Masonic ritual, children's stories, or religious stories or whatever. There's almost an inherent danger in taking, and that goes for Masonic ritual as well. You could say that when do people argue that the boy who cried wolf is a literal story, or is there an allegory there? I just feel like we've gone the right way, with getting rid of some of these things. But in the same respect, it is a shame that it's taken so long to do it, or that it ever was so rigid in the first place, really.
So I have a personal anecdote to add to this too. When I was master, we went through one of the degrees for one of our candidates who, at the time, his hearing aid completely died. And so I was literally yelling the obligation.
I was there for that.
Literally yelling the obligation, and he maybe heard every other word at best. And I mean, it just throws you off, right? For anyone who's been doing any ritual, right? It's hard enough to get the line straight when everything's going well. And then for the candidate to be completely throwing you off because they're hearing something different than what you're giving, and you have to consider all the other aspects of the degree. It was very stressful. We got through it, and we had a great degree, but hearing was an essential part of that part of the degree. Another thing I wanted to add was a story that Brent Morris had told me, and I can't remember if it was at a lodge event I went to or I saw it online somewhere. But he said he attended one degree overseas, and during the part of the ritual where the candidate's walking around the lodge, that everyone was instructed to take these metal sabers or whatever that they had underneath of their chairs and rattle them, like literally rattle sabers, to make this clanging noise and have a lot of just brash noise and chaos. And on the second time around, they were instructed to just make it very faint. And then the third time around to completely stop while they played a very angelic, choir harmony to show the transition away from the chaos that is the profane world and into a more serene, um, entry point into lodge work.
Show me the petition.
Oh, I know. See that? That's it. That's exactly where I'm going with this. Is okay. Perfect. That is a perfect use of hearing as applies to Masonic symbology. So now my next question to you guys is, how else would you use the candidate sense of hearing to enhance the ritualistic experience, making sure there's no innovations in masonry, of course?
Well, music is something that plays very heavily into the ritual when you have a musician. So that's one part of that.
What music would go well with a degree? Death metal?
Didn't I play an acoustic version of Welcome to the Jungle?
It took me a long time to figure out what the song was.
It was like an instrumental version of Welcome to the Jungle, but that was for the opening of the lodge. A lot of folks tend to go with classical pieces. I've heard, so I've seen lists of like where Grand Lodges will publish, these are some of the acceptable songs for, to be played in certain parts of the Masonic ritual. And in one is like, hi ho, it's off to work we go, for like the opening of the lodge. And I'm like, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You're so doing it wrong.
That's not a real thing. Stop it.
I've heard it.
Oh, I have to.
Dare I say, if I heard that, I might even leave the lodge.
Yep.
Call me an elitist jerk, but that's just ridiculous.
Call me an elitist jerk, but I'm an elitist jerk.
Yeah. That's
no,
terrible.
but I'm with you 100% on that. Like, I think, I've mentioned this before. I have this romantic idea of what it could be, of what an experience could be. When you think of a film, for example, there are moments in film where there's a subtle use of a transition from one color to another, and you understand the symbolism behind it. Not everyone's going to get it, but there's going to be that percentage of people whose experience is going to be dramatically improved because they recognized it.
So here's a good point for that. If you watch the Matrix movies, that they show the Matrix has a tint of green and the real world has a tint of gray.
Ah, look at you.
Go back and watch that. Now you'll appreciate it more because you can see visually when they're separate from the real world.
Mm-hmm. And the same thing happens with, of course, keeping it on topic. It happens with sound, with music. You'll have moments that are somewhat quiet, and they're meant to draw you in, to show intimacy, and then you have moments that are loud, that perhaps put you at a distance, or symbolize a threat. And those things can be replicated in lodge. But since, and it wouldn't be an innovation when you think that music could be played. And
okay, music aside, Juan, how else would you add sound elements to enhance the ritual?
Well, I'm not against having a soundboard, having some sort of, and I've thought about this, where you could have an ambient sound, perhaps when you imagine in the master degree, right? And I know that there are moments that it's used. I don't want to reveal anything, but there are moments of movement of people, and you have other members of the lodge that are not part of the actual ritual contribute with their their feet, perhaps. If done right, it could really enhance the experience, especially when you deprive someone of one of the senses. They have to compensate with the others. And if you have someone deprived of vision, perhaps, then they are going to be paying more attention and dedicating more of their mental capacity to hearing. That's why people's breath are so horrible during the ritual. It's not that it smells, is that you can't see, it makes the smell worse.
So, can we talk a little bit about oral delivery of the
That's
ritual?
where I was going to go. That's a great segue.
Didn't get there, so
Which is exactly that. Ums and ahs and line and
and monotone delivery, like I'm reading it out of a cipher book.
yes. Again, if the system is designed for 90% transfer through hearing, do not under any circumstances just write it off as something I'll do later. Right? Be proficient. Any TO movement, any lodge that really takes things seriously will focus on ritual first. Meaning, not just it's the literal words, it's that the delivery is as close to perfect as possible. And I think that's a big selling point into ensuring that the sounds transferred are clear, articulate, and on point.
And dare I suggest that, and of course I'm a fan of the aspect of allowing people to develop their speaking ability, of an influence in the performance of a ritual by making people that are going to be participating in the ritual more active in the lodge. Let's say, for example, you were to give them tips on how to project, how to speak clearly, how to enunciate certain things that might be difficult, or even having brothers who have experience with public speaking, give tips on how to actually have a meaningful and impactful delivery. So having brothers giving brief talks during a lodge meeting can break them off the timidity of speaking in front of other people, and that could enhance the experience of the ritual.
How about you, Robert? What would you add to enhance the auditory senses?
So I like the idea of the ambient noise, but not just any noise. Like without going into too much stuff, but I guess if you're into meditations, for instance, right, there are mantras and things that go on during meditations, and there's a reason for that. Just have you ever walked into like a GameStop or like a kind of any kind of store that gears toward younger folks? When you walk in, sometimes, like, there's a GameStop right by me that anytime I walk in there, I swear to God, they have like the bass turned up on their speakers and they're just emitting, like, I swear, like maybe 9 hertz. It's just, ooh. And I'm like, why does it feel like I'm going through THX 1138, before Lucasfilm here? Don't sue me, Lucas. I think what I would do maybe is probably add something like, if you've ever heard a presentation I do about the tetragrammaton, I talk about B flat. I think I would do like a B flat at like 6 hertz, and I would amplify the garbage out of it and just turn it up and just have it so that it's barely audible in the background, but like you could feel it. I think that would be really interesting. Specifically, 6 hertz. You put that, if you like, disclaimer, don't try this at home, but if you do, put on headphones, go to YouTube, B flat, 6 hertz, or just type in 6 hertz, a sine wave, and sit there and listen to that constant sine wave for about 5 minutes. Take it off. Disorientation and a headache. It's cool. Don't do it, but that's what can happen. And I think there's something to that.
This lodge brought to you by the Brown Note.
Yeah, you definitely don't play the Brown Note.
Yes.
But in all seriousness, I think that having that kind of ambient noise in the background adds to like the depth, and if you can feel the vibration in your body. I mean, it's incredible. Personal anecdote. I used to work at an airport, and I dealt with I was an OSHA coordinator for the Department of Defense, and well, in an extended capacity. Anyway, there was an airplane there that I never, ever, ever, ever wanted to be outside whenever it was starting up. It was called a Mitsubishi MU-2. So if you know your airplanes, good for you. But when this thing starts up, I swear to God, the engines vibrate at the frequency of a human body because it feels like you're liquefying your insides just standing within 40 feet of it. And it's just a turboprop aircraft. But like that sound, if you can feel it, even at a low volume, like hertz, it'd be amazing. I think that's what I'd do.
Cool. One, I know you had taken some notes too about the biblical significance of
Yes.
transmission through hearing. Why don't you go through some of those?
Yes. I have, and it kind of relates to what I talked about earlier about that having that proximity between the people that are communicating. But part of the symbolism of hearing and talking about ears has to do with obedience. When you listen to the instruction and then find a way to follow it. There are a couple of scriptures here that I found. Mainly, I had access to a lot more, but I'll give you one. Deuteronomy 5:1. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the judgments which I speak in your ears this day." And I find it to be a peculiar expression that it says, "I'm speaking in your ear," and which makes me think of that connection, that proximity, that close contact between the transmitter and the receiver. And the other one is, I don't have the context of it here, but there are many, many scriptures in which it doesn't just talk about speaking, but it talks about speaking to the ear, which always alludes to that guidance and that counsel that you have towards people. If I find the page, I have so many tabs open, but if I find the page,
No, I think that's interesting too. I think it would be a good homework assignment for anybody listening too, to figure out the understanding of listening and hearing and the instruction handed down in the biblical references, right? Not just lodge references, but for those who are supposed to be using the Bible as their rule and guide of their faith, to deconstruct other passages and see how that is applied throughout the Old and New Testament, to see if there's a theme there. And I'm sure there is.
Yeah. And what I could find from, I'm looking at more of the scriptures here, just for the brothers that might be taking notes. Jeremiah 28:7, 1 Samuel 11:4, Judges 7:3. I'm sure someone's going to write this and other brothers are going to look at it. Deuteronomy 32, verse 44, and 2 Kings 23:2. In all of them, where it talks about covenant, it talks about instruction, it talks about obedience, it talks about it in that sense, almost mouth to ear, so speaking in their ear. But it makes you think, if you want to interpret this a little bit further, the power of the message. Here's the instruction. I'm telling you to tell them something, but don't just relay the information. Get close to them and convey the information. I think that's the key to this, because you can tell anybody any message you want, but if you do so in a way that you connect with them, then the effectiveness of that message is significantly increased.
Awesome. Wow, we've had quite a plethora of perspectives on hearing in Freemasonry, and so now it's your turn. Let's go over to social media to hear what you're saying. Jason.
All right, so the first question coming from Brother John Gallant, saying, what would be the reason behind the strict interpretation of the requirements in the past? Talking about what we were saying about the statutes against deaf members of society and amputees, and those members with those disabilities not being able to be Masons. So would there be any reasoning today where we should adhere to those strict requirements so that new members are not a burden to the lodge? And does today's Masonry support or negate that?
So I have my own interpretation of that. And first off, I want to thank John Gallant for his continued support of the show. But I think at its peak, well, I mean, even Mackey was writing about this in the 1800s too, that it was more literal and not esoteric order. So, I changed my mind right in mid-sentence, because I know when you look at the peak of Masonry in the late 50s, 59, it was much of a joiner society, and they took things much more literal than allegorical. And so I don't know what the adaptation was really due to. So I failed. That's a good question. Robert?
I think it is the literal interpretation of someone being worried in some capacity. Forgive me, I don't know a term that is bigotry that is against. Does bigotry cover maimed and like deaf and poor sighted?
Sure. They're different.
Okay, so I think there's probably something there that deals with that, and the specific, anybody who has those kind of bigoted views is usually pulls back to some sort of factual component. They point out some literal thing. You can't do this, and I think that probably has something to do with due guards, signs, penalties, grips, these kind of things that people say, we're a secret society and we have all these things. I think that's probably where that comes in, unfortunately, but not so much anymore, because
it's the inability to provide that legal Masonic information designating yourself as a Mason to other members.
You said it so much better. Thank you.
So moving on to Mike the intern, and he's totally setting me up for this one. He's asking, is there a rhythm to ritual when actually done correctly that might in fact make it easier to learn? And I know I've talked about this on the show before, but that's actually how I learn ritual, is being attuned to rhythmic progressions, being a percussionist and a drummer. I can key in on the cadence of words. And so ritual is very easy for me to learn mouth to ear because I can memorize the cadence of the words and the inflections and the syllables. And that helps me piece it back together in my mind later on.
So I've got a challenge for you. Is it iambic pentameter? We'll have to go back, at least look at some of the Preston ritual and see what the cadence is.
I didn't say it was standardized. I really don't think the ritual adheres to a standard cadence.
Mm-hmm. With the exception of there are common clauses and common structures.
Sure, of course.
That. So at least in Virginia, it's different everywhere. But I wonder,
Pennsylvania, you're screwed.
Oh, good stuff.
So Brother Alex Powers says, for those of you, and you know who you are, making goat noises while the candidate is in the prep room is not a part of the audio experience that we're referring to in this episode.
Man, I can't even tell you. I was at a degree a few weeks ago. Dude made a goat joke. I was like, it's not even funny. Find something else. It's dumb. Just stop.
Yeah, goat jokes were like a part of like my college fraternity ritual. I don't need them like, when I'm a grown man.
It wasn't a goat.
Awful, yeah. Thanks, Alex.
Good comment though. Because I was thinking about this in context with the Gentleman's Brotherhood. where sometimes we look back with nostalgia of times gone by when things were better and what have you. Like we refer to gentlemen used to do this and used to do the other, but not everything used to be better. There are things that are better today. And in Masonry, we have a past of where we would have been closer to a fraternity, like with hazing and all these kinds of things. So I think we've moved far away. We've moved away to a degree from hazing and that sort of stuff, but there's a little bit left, so like the best moment of distancing ourselves from heckling and hazing is not necessarily in the past. I don't know what you said, but
it sounded great. It sounded awfully pretty.
I should have said it with some a little bit of accent, make it sexy.
Anyway, so we're going to finish up social media tonight with an absolutely amazing rant from Brother Donnie Dillon, who says, pet peeves, mouth to ear only. So for those of you who don't know, the jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge of Virginia is a strict mouth to ear state, which means we don't have any ciphers. We don't really have any ritual books where the ritual is written down. We have some...
Got a picture of what that looks like.
We have some monitors and whatnot. Oh God.
That's awesome.
That is horrifying.
That's Mike Tyson, actually.
Yeah. Giving the word to Evander Holyfield. So getting back to Brother Donnie's comments, a quick Google search will reveal many studies on information acquisition and retention that show that the best retention comes from listening and actively taking well-organized notes. Taking notes not only helps by providing a record to review, but also engages different parts of the brain and enhances retention of new memories. As Freemasons, we pride ourselves on word-perfect recitation, and yet we cling to outdated methods of teaching and learning. Hearing is great, but we simply learn better by engaging all of our senses in a variety of experiences related to the material at hand. For being a progressive science, we seem to have left the science of learning behind in favor of tradition. Thoughts?
I think there's a lot to that. I think it would be just fantastic if we adapted something. If you had a real mentor program in your lodge, like Illinois is supposed to have these things. We have the intender program. Every lodge should have these intenders, and we're supposed to know these books inside and out, these books that they get after the EA, FC, MM, and further on. But wouldn't it be awesome, like, if you could just toss them like a VARK test first, which is like VARK, right? Visual, audible, reading, and kinesthetic, and see how best they learn, and then give them a tailored experience. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, for me, I'm actually really in favor of getting a cipher book. And I know that's kind of a Band-Aid that doesn't even really get at Donnie's solution. But the fact of the matter is that when you restrict mouth to ear, like, you get committee on work members who disagree with what the right ritual is. And for me, I feel like there's no actual precision in the way ritual is performed across the jurisdiction because, we have like one copy of the ritual locked in a safe that no one's allowed to look at.
Do you have like a holy priest that can go in there once a year? And
we have to tie a rope around his leg first.
Yeah.
In case he has a heart attack from like the fact that
we're
doing the ritual wrong. Wait a second.
Oh, it's awesome.
God smites him.
It doesn't say celibate, it says celebrate. Yeah, no, Donnie, you hit the nail on the head. That's amazing. Yeah, from an alternative and adult learning theory, that'd be amazing to apply some of the behavioral and social learning systems that we know today if the concept is to get towards true light, right? Why do we limit it into a process that was defined very well, back in 300 years ago, and then now try to discount all the better learning techniques that we've learned through many studies? That's a really fascinating observation.
Because it's not the way we've always done it.
Not the way we've always done.
And there's an asterisk by always done it, because we really only remember what we've always done since like the 60s.
Right, one generation ago. Correct.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, if we want to keep on top of things and do things the most or the newest way, just go to video. Video degrees.
Dude, I almost did a spit take. Don't do that to me. All right. Great observation. Thank you, Donnie, for wrapping up our social media concept, because you nailed it. You did. Jason, why don't you bring us home?
All right. Final thoughts, shameless plugs, and everything in between. So we're going through 3 of the 5 senses over the next couple days, because no one really cares about smelling and tasting. That's really reserved for lodge dinners, and lodge dinners, as you know, are not a part of ritual, so we don't care. Anyway, the sense of hearing. As I mentioned earlier, the sense of hearing is really the foundational sense for how we first enter into our Masonic experience, and you can extrapolate from that what you will, but is so innately important to our increase in knowledge and our transfer of Masonic secrets and Masonic knowledge to one another. And I think that's one of the reasons why, as far as the 5 senses are concerned, it's often listed first. So it's really the building block from which all of your other Masonic experiences are perceived and felt. So hearing's awesome. Go hearing. Anyway, come out to 300. We're still selling tickets every day, so we've got room for you, and it's going to be awesome. So come out. It'll be great. Monday night, I'm doing a little bit of traveling. I'm going to be up visiting Brother Dave Bacon up in New Philadelphia, Ohio. I'm going to be giving my lecture on the evolution of early Scottish Freemasonry, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So check it out. And if you're interested in having me talk about Scottish Masonry or Russian Freemasonry or the story of Noah as an archetype for the 3rd degree, send me an email. I'd be happy to either come to your lodge or do something virtually, so I can do either. Other than that, back to you, John.
Thank you. All right, Juan, your thoughts.
Well, I always enjoy the the episodes. I think I always open with that. Well, I enjoyed this episode because blah, 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 blah. No, but I like the fact that, we're going back to some of the fundamental, and we're looking at them from a fresh perspective. I think it's important that if we have any hopes of growing to be better men, we have to do that. Even if we reach the 30 or the 99th degree, I think it's important that we look back and reassess some of these things that were told us, that were spoken in our ear, that we might have perhaps forgotten, or now we have more light and we can see them from a new perspective. So I hope that you've derived some light from our episode today. Let us know if there's anything that we didn't mention. Go to our Facebook page and add some comments and engage in the conversation. This doesn't end. And as parting words, I wanted to bring your attention to something that I'm very excited about. I just recently revealed something that I've been working in secret Masonically for quite a while, and I have put together a collection of different items, and I've put them in a box. Items in a box. A mystery Masonic box is the latest item that I've put together on freemasonryart.com.
It's
And-
plans in.
Yeah, I recognize one of the names that came through the list, and I wish you good luck. The cool thing is that within the box you'll find Masonic art. It could be jewelry, it could be some pins, apparel, decals, stickers, emblems. I've collected a lot of things that I've put in the box. So the first batch of boxes went out today, and the cool thing is that one of them contains an original work of art in it. So I can't wait to hear from the brother that gets it. So for just $34, and even if you don't get the art, the value of the items that I put here are between $60 and $70 on this month, and it's just $34.95. So you win anyway. But boy, that brother's gonna be pumped up when he gets it, though. I cannot wait. I really hope that he takes a picture of it and he posts it. He makes a big deal about it, because I want to know how he feels. But if you want to get your own box, and we started this month, but it's going to be a monthly thing. So keep your eye out on freemasonryart.com so you can learn more about it. Thank you, brothers.
Okay, Robert.
First of all, the mystery box is amazing. That's such a cool thing.
It's like Loot Crate. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's BA. So super cool. Thanks for doing that, Juana. I think that's awesome. Thoughts on the word, on hearing. So hearing for me just goes back to the word, the tetragrammaton. I talk a lot about the mythos, the power of words, what they're supposed to do, how they seemingly alter reality. You can look at like Tibetan monks who have prayer wheels, and they spin prayer wheels, right? Because they feel like even just the spelling of words affects the air around them, or affects the reality around them. The words are inherently the human's conceptualized notion of, or the power of creation. And it's so important. Science says that if you lose a sense, the one to lose, if you got to pick hearing or seeing, it's seeing, because hearing, they argue that you have a better survival rate from hearing than you do seeing. There's so much, man, it's really deep, guys, but hearing in itself is just that mechanism by which you experience the word. And I find that very important. Not that you have to be able to hear to know the word, but it really ties into it. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. And I loved the episode and hearing about the importance of the instruction and the intimacy of the connections that brothers make. And I think that's really important. So thanks for watching this episode and sticking with us with this interesting topic. As Juan said, we went back to basics, and I found it really interesting. Plugs, of course, you guys know Whence Came You is Masonic podcast that comes out on 9:30 on Sunday nights. We try to have a guest every other week or so. The speaking engagements I've got coming up are going to be, I'll be in Jefferson City, Missouri, and that's going to be on the 6th at noon. I'm going to be doing a talk on the tetragrammaton of the word, so a non-tiled event. So if you're interested, come on out for that. And the very next day, I'll be in Hesperia Lodge in Chicago doing a presentation about connecting Masons through technology. It's what we're doing right here. So veritable experts, anybody watching or on the show. So check that out. And then in the end of June, so June 21, I'll be in Columbus, Ohio. And then, of course, the 300. So 300 is going to be fantastic. I super stoked about it. And I just can't wait to meet everybody and hang out and shake hands and say hello. And it's going to be fantastic, guys. I don't want to, I'm not trying to sound presidential, but I just keep saying fantastic and amazing, but it's just going to be, so it's going to be huge. Check it out. That's all I got. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Very cool. So yeah, in conclusion, Juan really inspired me there with the, what if there were a set of ambient things in there. Another thing I was going to add to the enhancing logic experience through hearing is the delivery of certain knocks through the degrees, right, to make them deliberate and at a certain cadence. And I think that would really help enhance what the candidate's going through as they're listening to those for the first time. But it would be really funny to take funny, awesome in the sense if we had something like, TMR presents The Lodge, an album of ambient and climactic progressions as it applies to the 3 degrees in Freemasonry. I mean, look, Mozart wrote different pieces for, Masonic funerals, for the Fellowcraft degree, et cetera, et cetera. That's all documented. I mean, how cool would it be to have your very own lodge soundtrack that, although timing will be hard, right, to get everything down at the right place. But if you could have something that builds up into almost a 3-act play as an auditory experience to go with that, and that, especially for those master masons who would understand and appreciate how dramatic a climactic instrumental score would be to the second half of a Master Mason degree, would just blow my mind, right? If we could pull that off. So homework, guys, pull that together, license that under Creative Commons, and we'll use it in the show. No, that would just be
Just get Alan Silvestri to do it. I don't think he's a Mason, but okay, we got some great composers out there, but Alan Silvestri, I think he did Predator. It just doesn't get any better than that.
Get him and John Williams together in a room and make it happen.
Throw in a little Atticus Ross in there as well.
With a touch of Skrillex. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, on that note, this has been a great episode. I've learned a lot from listening to all of you. So, thank you very much for watching. And keep searching for more light. Have a good night.